So I'm going to explain how to factor using the generic rectangle and diamond problem to help you factor trinomials into binomial form. This method is good for those people that like to use the generic rectangle to help them distribute. So factoring is the opposite of distributing. So if I had x minus 5 and 3x plus 2, you'll notice that I have 3x times x is 3x squared, negative 15x, 2x, and negative 10. These pieces become this, right? And just as easily, we could use this part, and that's what we're going to learn today, to find the outside. So you can look, for example, we're going to divide out in a moment. We can look at here. If we wanted to look at the biggest common factor you can divide out of negative 10 and 2, it's a 2. And if you wanted to find the biggest common factor you can divide out of 15x and negative 10, it would be negative 5. So we're going to go backwards. Instead of multiplying by negative 5 times 2 to get negative 10, we're going to go backwards. That's how we're going to find the factors. Well, some of the things we need to know in general. Trinomial, the standard form of a quadratic is a trinomial, where a stands for the number in front of the x squared, just the number, not the x squared itself. And the b stands for the coefficient of the x term, once again, just the number, not the x. And then c is the constant. So if we look at this one, here's our a. Whoops. Our a is going to be just 3. Our b is going to be negative 6. Be careful there. Always pay attention to that part. And then the c is 3. And we need to be able to recognize that, and that'll help us in a lot of different things later. The first step in factoring is always to see if you can divide out a common factor from all of the terms. So you're going to go ahead and look at the ax squared term, the bx term, and the c term, and see, is there a number you can divide out of all 3 of them? And in this case, that number is 3. So I can take the 3 and I can divide it out. And if I had 3x squared and I divide out the 3, all I have left is an x squared. And if I have a negative 6x and I divide out a 3, I'm going to have a negative 2x left. And then if I divide it out of 3, I'm just going to have a 1 left. And sometimes we have to go back and refactor that part. We'll get to that later. If there's no c, by the way, if you're missing that c, if it's just plus 0, all you have to do is see if there's a common factor you can divide out. And if there isn't one, then you're just going to pull out an x. So in this case, 4 is divisible by 2, and it has an x, and then this one's divisible by 2. So we would take a 2x out, and if we divided 4x squared by 2x, all we'd have left is 2x. If we divided 2x from the negative 6x, we would end up with negative 3. You can always check to see if you're right by multiplying it back out, right? 2x times 2x is 4x squared, and 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. So we factored it properly. So the first thing we're always going to do is we're going to check our a, our b, and our c. Is there a number that divides into 7 and negative 27 and negative 4 that we can divide out? There isn't. So we're just going to continue. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the a. And we're going to look at the a and think, okay, well, the only way to get 7x squared is to have 7x times x. So we know ahead of time what it's going to start to look like. Then you keep that in mind. Now we're going to go ahead and take our ax squared and our c and put it in the box. We know that that's our first term and our last term, but what we're going to be looking for right now is our other parts, our like terms that we normally have right here, right? We're looking for that part. That's the part we don't know. So we're going to use a diamond problem to help us. And this is how we use the diamond problem. We're going to go and take the a times the c, that goes on the top of your diamond problem every time. A times c, and the b term is going to go in the bottom part. So a times c on top, b on the bottom part. So we're going to go ahead and do that with our problem that we have right here. So we're going to take a times c. A times c is 7 times negative 4. So that's negative 28. And then we're going to go ahead and take the b term, and we're going to put it in here. And now we're just going to check to see what are the factors of negative 28 that add up to negative 27. And when you're working through this with me, it's a really good idea to just stop and think it through yourself and then see if you've got the correct answer. In this case, the factors of negative 28 that add up to negative 27, it has to be negative 28 and positive 1. Okay? So here's how we're going to use our diamond problem. It's going to give us the information that goes in our like terms area. So here we are going to go ahead and take the negative 28x, and then this becomes the 1x in the other one. So now, whoops, that wasn't supposed to change colors. Now we have our box, our 4 multiplication problems, the products done. Now all we have to do to factor it is we have to go backwards. So we're going to go ahead and focus on this part. So we're going to go ahead and divide out, going this way and going this way. We're going to divide out. So we're going to look at negative 28x and negative 4. What's the biggest number they have in common? The biggest number they have in common is negative 4. And what does 7x squared and 1x have in common? Biggest thing they have in common is an x. So here we have one of our factors. We have x minus 4 is one of our factors. And then you could probably figure out what the other one has to be, because the last ones have to be a 1, but we'll continue to use the process here. Going this way, we're going to go ahead and divide out the biggest common factor there, 28 and 7. The biggest common factor they have is a 7, and then the x and the x squared, the biggest factor they have is an x. And the negative 4 and 1x only have a 1 in common. So that is our other factor. 7x plus 1. So 7x plus 1 times x minus 4 is the same thing as 7x squared. Minus 28 plus 1x is minus 27x. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. These are the same. This is the factored form, and this is the standard form. Okay, so this one I'm going to do pretty quickly. First, can you factor out a common factor? We look at x squared, there's a invisible 1 there, and then negative 4 and a negative 32. The biggest number you could divide out is 1, so we don't have to worry about that. Then we're going to look at a, and how can we get 1x squared? There's only one way to get that, so we know that our factors are going to look like x something, x times x is x squared. Now we're going to take our first and last terms and put them where they belong in the box. And then we're going to go ahead and take our a times c, 1 times negative 32, and that's negative 32, and our negative 4. Then you're going to go ahead and find the factors of negative 32 that add up to negative 4. Now 32 is 8 and 4, 32 and 1, 8 and 4 will work. This is when you use your 12 by 12 chart if factors are not your strong suit. So you're going to go ahead and it's going to be 8 and 4. It's got to be a negative and a positive. So one of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. And we want the sum to be negative, so it's going to be negative 8. So then we take our side numbers and put them in negative 8x and positive 4x. And then the last piece we have to do is go ahead and divide out at each direction. So I'm going to blow that part up so it's easier to see. And then let's see. Let's get some, if we're dividing out this way, negative 8 and negative 32 have the biggest common factor of negative 8. X squared and 4x, biggest common factor is x, so one of our factors is x minus 8. And then we can go ahead and look at the other way. this direction. Negative x, 8x and x squared, biggest common factor is x. And then here, the biggest common factor would be 4. And so our factors are, whoops, x plus 4 and x minus 8. And sure enough, if we multiply them out, we get x squared. A negative 8 and a positive 4 is negative 4x. And 4 times negative 8 is negative 32. So we have the factored form and the standard form. Do this one fast. Nope. A in the front, so it's got to be 2x and x. Put them where they belong. Here's our A. Here's our C. We're going to go ahead and put that product right here. And it's got to equal 1. We think to ourselves, what factors of negative 6 add to 1? And so 3 times 2 will work. Same question as last time. We want to make sure that the result, the product, is negative. So one of these has to be positive or negative, but this one wants to be positive, so the negative one this time is going to be the smaller number. So then we take those side numbers, and they go in our area there. We get 3x and negative 2x. And then we'd have to do that last piece, which is to divide them out. Moving in this direction, biggest factor is a 3. In this direction, it's a 2x. So there we go. We've got 2x plus 3. And then we have to do the other direction. Whoops, sorry. And we get biggest thing, the 2 and the 3 don't have anything in common, just an x then. And the 2 and the 3 don't have anything in common, but they both have negative, so it's minus 1. There you go. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 3 and negative 2 is positive 1x. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. We've got what we want. Last one. Can you factor out a common factor? 4 and 15 and negative 4. No number can divide out of all 3 of those except for 1. So that's a nope. We can look at A. Now with A here, it's possible that it's going to be 4x times x, or it's going to be 2x times 2x. And we will find out pretty quickly which that's going to be. But this is what we're going to possibly be looking at. We're going to go ahead and take our 4x squared and our negative 4, put it in the box, and then we're going to go ahead and find our A, find our C, and it's going to be negative 16. It's got to add up to negative 15. Factors of negative 16 that add up to negative 15 are going to be negative 16 and positive 1. We need them to be negative product, so it's a negative and a positive. We want a negative result when we add, so the bigger number has to be negative. So we get negative 16x and 1x, whoops. And then all we have to do is divide our stuff out. So here we go, we're going to go this way. Biggest number you can divide out is negative 4, and biggest number you can divide out here is just an x. So here's my x minus 4. That means that it's not going to look like that. It's going to be the other way. And negative 16x and 4x is going to be a 4x in common. And a negative 4 and a 1x is going to be plus 1. So there is our factors. Well done.